Part 1. The First Stirrings. I never believed in demons. Not really. Sure, I'd read about them in the Bible as a kid, but they were always just symbols of temptation or human wickedness. Nothing real. Nothing that could reach out and touch you. I was wrong. So terribly, catastrophically wrong. My name is Michael Carver. I guess I should say I was a history professor at a small liberal arts college in New England. My life was ordinary, even boring by most standards. I taught my classes, graded papers, and spent my free time researching obscure historical events that nobody else cared about. I lived alone in a small apartment, my only companion a temperamental cat named Whiskers. Looking back, I can pinpoint the exact moment everything changed. It was a Tuesday evening in late September. The air had just started to turn crisp, hinting at the approaching autumn. I was in my office, poring over some student essays on the Protestant Reformation, when I came across a quote that caught my attention. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Ephesians 6:12. I'd read it before, of course, but something about it resonated with me that night. Maybe it was the way the shadows seemed to deepen in the corners of my office, or the sudden chill that ran down my spine. Whatever it was, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted in the world around me. That night, I had the first dream. I found myself in a garden unlike any I'd ever seen. Gnarled olive trees surrounded me, their branches twisting towards a starless sky. The air was thick, oppressive, carrying the scent of decay and something else, something ancient and unsettling. And then I heard it, a whisper so faint I almost missed it.
Watch and pray.
I woke up in a cold sweat, those words echoing in my head. I tried to shake it off, to convince myself it was just a strange dream brought on by too much late-night reading. But as the days passed, the whispers didn't stop when I opened my eyes. At first, it was subtle. I'd be lecturing about the Crusades, and suddenly, I'd hear it, hidden in the scratch of pens on paper.
Watch and pray.
In the faculty lounge, I'd catch it in the gurgle of the coffee maker.
Watch and pray.
Soon, I was hearing it everywhere. In the rustle of leaves on my walk home,
Watch and pray.
in the hum of my refrigerator,
Watch and pray.
in the static between radio stations.
Watch and pray.
I tried to ignore it, tried to convince myself I was just stressed, maybe developing some kind of auditory hallucination. I even went to see a doctor who found nothing wrong with my hearing and suggested I might be suffering from tinnitus. But I knew this was something different, something worse. As the whispers grew more frequent, I started to notice other things. The shadows in my apartment seemed deeper, more alive somehow. I'd catch glimpses of movement out of the corner of my eye, only to turn and find nothing there. Even Whiskers started acting strangely, hissing at empty corners and refusing to enter certain rooms. My work began to suffer. I'd find myself zoning out in the middle of lectures, lost in the constant murmur of that biblical warning. My students noticed, of course. I overheard them whispering about Professor Carver's breakdown when they thought I couldn't hear. But I could hear. I could hear everything. One night, about 2 weeks after the first dream, I was grading papers in my living room when the power went out. The sudden darkness was absolute, suffocating. And in that darkness, I heard the whisper clearer than ever before.
Watch and pray, for you know not when the time will come.
I recognize the verse now. Mark 13:33. A warning about the end times. Why was I hearing this? What was I supposed to be watching for? As if in answer, I saw something move in the darkness. A deeper shadow, writhing and twisting in a way that defied natural laws. I fumbled for my phone, desperate for its light, but by the time I turned on the flashlight, the shadow was gone. The power came back on a few minutes later, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. The world felt thinner somehow, as if the barrier between reality and something else had been stretched to the breaking point. I stopped sleeping after that night. How could I, when every time I closed my eyes, I was back in that suffocating garden? I drank coffee by the pot, took stimulants, anything to stay awake. But it only made things worse. The shadows multiplied. They danced at the edges of my vision, always retreating when I tried to focus on them. But I could feel their presence, their weight. They were waiting for something. My colleagues started to notice. The department head, Dr. Eleanor Simmons, called me into her office one afternoon. Her face was creased with concern as she asked me if everything was all right.
You look exhausted, Michael.
She said.
And some of your students have expressed worry about your recent behavior.
I wanted to tell her. To explain about the whispers, the shadows, the constant feeling of dread that had become my constant companion. But how could I? She'd think I was crazy. Hell, maybe I was crazy. So I lied. Told her I was just having trouble sleeping, that I'd see a doctor about it. She seemed relieved, but not entirely convinced.
Take care of yourself, Michael.
She said as I left her office.
And remember, if you need to talk, my door is always open.
If only I had taken her up on that offer, if only I had reached out to someone, anyone, before it was too late. But I was already too far gone, too wrapped up in the growing horror of my situation. As I walked back to my office, the whispers grew louder, more insistent.
Watch and pray, for the hour is at hand.
I quickened my pace, trying to outrun the voices in my head. But they were everywhere, in everything. And as I rounded the corner to my office, I saw something that made my blood run cold. There, scratched into the wood of my office door, were 3 words: "He is coming." I stood there frozen, staring at those words. They hadn't been there that morning. I was sure of it. Someone, or something, had carved them while I was in Dr. Simmons's office. With trembling hands, I unlocked my door and stepped inside. The room was dark, the blinds drawn against the afternoon sun. As my eyes adjusted to the gloom, I saw something on my desk. A book, open to a page I hadn't been reading. I approached slowly, every instinct screaming at me to run. But I couldn't. I had to know. The book was my old Bible, the one I'd had since childhood, but hadn't opened in years. It was open to the book of Revelation, and one verse was underlined in what looked horribly like blood. "Behold, I come as a thief. Blessed is he that watcheth and keepeth his garments, lest he walk naked, and they see his shame." Revelation 16:15. As I stared at those words, the whispers rose to a crescendo, no longer just in my head, but filling the room.
Watch and pray, for the time is at hand.
I ran, out of my office, out of the building, out into the fading daylight. But even as I fled, I knew the truth that I had been trying so hard to deny. Whatever was coming, whatever had its eyes on me, it was already here. And this was only the beginning.